So hello everyone and welcome back to the P. Carroll Sport podcast on this Sunday the 9th of February 2025. I'm Paul Carroll and I'll be going through the Tipperary Limerick game on this week's podcast, giving my thoughts on how the Tipperary senior hurling team are progressing and talking about some other things as we go through the podcast as well. At the end of the podcast I will give my updated Tipperary championship team that we're going to be rolling throughout the weeks as this podcast goes on, and who's in, who's out, that kind of thing, as we try and predict the Tipperary starting lineup for the game against Limerick on April 12th, I think it is, in the maybe April 14th in the start of the Munster Championship. So we'll go through the Tip Limerick game, but before we get started, just want to say a big thanks to everyone who was in contact last week after last week's podcast, and I kind of shared some personal news. So plenty of people were in touch and plenty of nice comments as well. So just a big thanks to everyone. I'm feeling a bit better. I'm hoping to get back into work now next week and slowly get back to normal. So not too long and we'll be motoring well again. But let's get straight into it. So Tipperary played Limerick in the National League round 3 in the Gaelic grounds. It finished up Limerick 30 points, Tipperary's 123. Before we kind of go down through individual performances and things like that, first of all, the thing that sticks out watching this game, especially the first half, was just the intensity of the game and the speed it was played at. Like if you were at the Tip Wexford game last week, I mean, this game against Limerick, it couldn't be any further from that Wexford game. Like that game against Wexford was played at very much a challenge game kind of pace. It was slow, players had loads of time on the ball. This was close to Munster Championship pace in the Gaelic grounds, particularly in that first half, which is really good because, you know, as Liam Cahill is trying to breed in these younger players into the team, that's exactly the type of experience that they'll need. And you know, players in new positions like Owen Connolly there at full back, how's he going to do in that circumstance? Craig Morgan in midfield and different things like that, and someone like Dar McCarthy, getting him used to that kind of intensity. So it was a really good, I suppose, a day out in that kind of sense. And yeah, we'll go down through it, but just I wanted to make a point of that, of how intense that first half was. Players didn't have time on the ball. There were so much hits and challenges going in, and really good stuff. So really good, like not more than a training exercise, obviously, but just in terms of what I'd imagine Liam Cahill and his management team got out of today, I'd imagine it was a lot. Now Tip come away with the loss, which is disappointing, but up by a point at half time. We've been there before against Limerick, and there was probably an element of PTSD for Tipperary supporters because we've seen kind of second half collapses against Limerick in recent years. But although Tip kind of struggled from play in that second half scoring, I thought they really hung in there and done really well to stay in that game. You know, there was 2 points in it on 69 minutes. I think Ethan Hurley was it who hit a long range point to put Limerick up by 3, number 20, yeah, Ethan Hurley. And you know, but Tip were right there. Now, you know, Limerick do have a lot of names that are probably new, and Kyle Hayes went off injured in that first half, but you know, there's still some incredible players in that Limerick team, and Limerick as well as Tipperary are trying to breed in new players as well, as John Kiley will probably try and transition away from that core that's been there for the last 7 or 8 years. They'll need kind of 1 or 2 new players coming on each year, and probably trying to do that again. But they've some really good young players coming to Limerick, and Limerick got some, like I've kind of some bullet points written down. Limerick got some scandalous scores really in that game. There's a couple of times Brian O'Mara had his man right out on the sideline and the ball somehow goes straight over the bar. So, you know, I thought as a whole Tipperary done well. We've done a lot right, done some things wrong as well. And that second half I thought probably kind of faded away in the forwards. Not a lot of ball was coming, was sticking up there and things like that, and not a lot from play in that second half. But really hung in there. Could have had a couple of more goals possibly. There was a couple of half chances. Shane Dowling made that save from a Shawnee Kennelly shot that, you know, he didn't catch it as nice as he caught the first goal he got. And it was a save by Shane Dowling, and Dar McCarthy came in on the rebound and was kind of deflected, and Shane Dowling goes volleyed it away for a finish. But little things like that, and from that play Limerick got a point to go up by 4, and that was with about 20 minutes to go, and the crowd really got behind Limerick. So that was a kind of a turning point in the game, and a big moment more so than a turning point, I suppose. But overall, like, I'm relatively happy with the performance. Obviously the result, it would have been brilliant to come away from the Gaelic grounds with a win, But there was a lot to like about Tipperary, and something we're starting to see now, which was a talking point before the league, was, what is Tipperary's best team? Who's going to be playing where? Like before the start of the championship last year, you couldn't really guess 10 players maybe in the starting lineup. Whereas this year now, I think from the first 3 games, we could probably say Owen Connolly is going to be full back, Ronan Maher is going to be centre back, and Jake Morris is going to be centre forward. I think that kind of spine is fairly set in. And when we went through kind of a predicted lineup last week, I didn't have a full forward nailed on. I think Shawnee Kennelly done really well today to nail that position. Maybe not nail it, but he done about as well as he could. We'll talk about him in a little bit more. He got 1-3, I think, from play. And something, if you're a regular listener to this podcast and listening throughout the club championship as well, I say it every time about Shawnee Kennelly, is his ability to gather possession is incredible. Like, there was that goal chance that I spoke about there where Shane Dowling made the save and Kennelly didn't really catch it as sweetly as he would have liked. How he got that ball kind of in behind his man and he was gone. I'd love to see it again in slow motion. I've only seen that clip maybe twice, once live and a replay. But it's incredible. He made a couple of high catches as well. So it's a really, really good performance from Shawnee Kennelly, someone we hadn't seen yet this year for Tipperary, coming back from a couple of injuries. As Declan Laffin said on the TV coverage, I didn't get into the game myself this weekend, just wasn't feeling that up to it to be out and about all day. But yeah, overall good performance from Tipperary. Lot to like, a lot to work on. And we've a week off now. Next weekend the footballers are out, but the hurlers aren't in action next weekend. And then it's a double header down in Semple Stadium. Footballers playing London and the hurlers playing Cork. So that should be a really good day down in Thurles. That's Saturday the 22nd. So there's a bit of time now for the hurlers to get a bit of breathing space. And a good point to remember as well is this was the Tip team's 3rd week in a row. It was Limerick's 2nd week in a row. So that kind of plays in to the legs with some of the players, particularly around that middle third, the likes of Willie Connors, Craig Morgan, Jake Morris, Alan Tynan. They would have featured heavily in all the games so far. So yeah, Darren McCarthy as well, he would have played all 3 of the games. So let's go down through it. We had Barry Hogan in goals, which was a change from the first 2 games. Reece Shelley was in goals for the first 2 games. He had no real saves to make, did Barry, but done well with the puck outs. I thought he kind of, the second half, like obviously not being in the Gaelic grounds, you couldn't tell on TV, I'd say, but there seemed to be a bit of a breeze because Barry has a huge puck out, but they weren't going as long as they normally would. There's a couple of times you could see the players in the half forward line kind of running to get underneath the puck out. So there must have been a bit of a breeze there as well. It's still only February, ball is heavy, the ground was heavy as well. So plenty of factors there. But overall, yeah, I thought Barry done really well. It's going to be really interesting to see who's going to be wearing that number 1 jersey come the championship. Like Barry played all the championship last year, so maybe he's a bit ahead of Reece Shelley. But who knows really at this stage? I can't call it. Not much between the 2 lads. Barry probably likes to get puck outs away very quickly, and sometimes he gets caught on that. But it's going to be interesting to see who plays against Cork. Never mind who plays by the time the championship comes around, because yeah, I would say that Liam Cahill probably doesn't even know for sure yet who's going to be starting in goals for Tipperary come championship. But something that I'd say he's probably a little bit more comfortable with is the full back line. I thought Robert Doyle done really well again today. He's so good in around breaking balls, just flicking them away, somehow coming out of rucks with the ball, and he's very comfortable in possession as well, coming out with the ball. So there was one stage where the referee went in to Robert Doyle and Donncha O'Dóigh, and that's probably a good sign of a cornerback playing in his first real big game. Now I know he's played in other league games, but this was a step up inside in the Gaelic grounds. 11,000 there, game played at a high speed. The referee goes into Robert Doyle, and it's probably a good sign for a younger player that they're well in the game, well up for it, not shying back at all. Owen Connolly, I didn't see him much in the first half, but in that second half, particularly in those last 15-20 minutes, he was coming out with an awful lot of ball, so strong. There was one stage, I think it was Aaron Gallan just bounced off Owen Connolly coming out with a ball, so strong, and really, really making that number 3 jersey his own. Michael Breen, I thought, was at it from the start. He got a point early on. He was on a lot of ball, and he was just heavily involved in the game. So he's having a real good start to the year, Michael Breen. And that kind of full back line there is looking fairly solid at the minute in terms of that being the starting full back line, you'd have to say, at the minute. So out to the half back line, we mentioned Ronan Maher. I think he would probably be centre back. I think that's probably his best position, and he offers so much. He's so steady on the ball. The only criticism I maybe have of Ronan Maher today was that time Shane Dowling made the save and the ball was cleared. Tip actually won possession back, and he played a perfect ball into Willie Connors in the middle of the field. Perfect ball into his hand, but it was just Willie Connors probably under a little bit of pressure, and I think Adam English nicked it off him and the ball was over a bar, and that was a huge lift to Limerick. But Ronan Maher came out with so many ball, he collided with players, he's so strong coming out with the ball, and so just assured, and a real rock to the centre of that Tipperary defence. So thought he had a fine game. Seamus Kennedy, I didn't see an awful lot of him from just watching on TV, but sometimes you're watching it on TV and Owen Connolly has a white helmet, Michael Breen has a white helmet, Brian O'Mara has a white helmet, Seamus Kennedy has a white helmet, and Craig Morgan has a white helmet. So there's a lot of players in that part of the field with the same colour helmet. Now, when you're at the game, you're easily able to tell, okay, that's Seamus Kennedy, that's not Michael Breen or whatever. But so didn't see an awful lot of Seamus Kennedy on the ball, but again, he's coming back. It was against Limerick last year that he had his injury, so it's great to see him just getting through all these minutes into his legs and getting back up to full speed. Brian O'Mara, we mentioned him earlier, a couple of times he defended really well, had his man out on the sideline, and somehow the ball went over the bar a couple of times. He made one brilliant play where he snapped a puck out, brought it forward and put it over the bar, and that's the Brian O'Mara that we all in Tipperary know is there, and we hope that he can produce it more often. I think he's had a fine Tipperary career today. It's still a very young player with so much potential, and I think we're slowly starting to see him build now this year. I think, I'd like to see that continue now. That point was like a Rolls Royce score, a kind of top level kind of player kind of point. So he has that in him. So just keeping at it and keep growing into that wing back position. And be interesting to see how Brian O'Mara continues. But I'm a huge fan of his game. Willie Connors today, he was man of the match in the first two games. He got a long range point early on, and he was, as Willie Connors is, he was involved in all the action in around the middle of the field. Just probably didn't have his radar in for the long range shots like he might have last week or the weeks gone by. Hit a number of wides, and let's see, I just have the Irish Examiner's match report up just to see the scores, because I wasn't writing them down as I was going. So he got a point in the end, Willie Connors. But yeah, like, it's such a cauldron, that middle third of the field against Limerick. Adam English, Keane Lynch, he's just so good. Keane Lynch in around rucks, so smart in possession of the ball. But that middle third is just, it's crazy against Limerick. It's so fast and so intense, and you've no time on the ball. But this was a really good test. Craig Morgan as well, kind of that white helmet syndrome. Didn't see as much of him today, but there's way less space in that middle third against Limerick compared to the game against Galway, or compared to the game against Wexford. But I thought the lads held their own in there, but maybe didn't stand out in terms of getting on the ball as much as previous weeks. Likewise with Gerard O'Connor, wasn't on the ball a whole pile. He got a point for a finish. Haven't seen an awful lot of him so far this year, but he'll be run into it. He'll be togging out with UL during the week, as well as if Fitzgibbon Cup comes to a close. So, it would be nice. I suppose last year we saw nearly the best of Grode at this time of the year. If we don't see the best of him until the championship, then I think we'll all be pretty much happy with that. But he's going to be important for Tip because he brings that element of physicality and size to the forward line. So, not his best game today, but we'll be seeing a lot more of Grode in future weeks. Jake Morris, I think he got 4 points from play. I'll just bring it up here today. Jake Morris, 4 points from play. So it was one of those performances from Jake where he was really involved, which is number one. 11 is his spot, I think. It's way better having him in there than in the full forward line, I think, because he's able to roam around, come back for ball, get onto more loose possession, bring the ball forward to use his speed. Whereas if he's in the full forward line, it's, you could have a man up his back and then someone sitting in front of him and he won't be getting the ball. So he's getting way more possessions now, which is good for Tipperary because he's one of our best players, particularly in the forward line. So he took some great scores, made a few kind of poor decisions and took one or two kind of poor shots, but you wouldn't mind that. Overall, he done a lot more good than bad. So a good performance from Jake Morris, and he made some. He's gone very strong. There was one stage Colin Coughlin was coming out with the ball, and Colin Coughlin is a huge unit of a half back coming out, and Jake stood him up, collided with him, forced him out of possession, won the ball back, and won a free. So that's the kind of leadership that we want from Jake, and that we saw earlier today. So that was a good performance. Alan Tynan, the first like 10 minutes, he was frustrating me at times. He was kind of just wasn't getting the ball in his hand and things like that. But I thought he grew into the game and was combative as always, and kind of grew into the game as it went on. So he's had kind of a tough couple of weeks of just intense games and a lot of running in his legs. So I'm sure he'll be looking forward to maybe a couple of days rest and no game next weekend. But sure, they could be playing a load of challenge matches for all I know. I think they might be playing a challenge match during the week, as far as I'm aware. But Alan Tynan grew into the game, and did he get on the score sheet? I'm trying to think. I don't think he did. He got 3 points. So I don't know how I missed that, but as I said, grew into the game, and 3 points from play. That speaks for itself. So good performance from Alan Tynan. The full forward line now. Darius Stakelum, I thought he wasn't getting too much good ball put into him, but didn't really impose himself on the game either. So it was his first start of the year, but would have liked to have seen a bit more of him. But again, not a lot of great service went into him. Shawnee Kennelly, 1-3 from play. The goal he got was just, I'd say I've seen it already about 10 times, and I'll watch it another 10 times before I go to bed. I'd say just first time volley, lovely hand pass from Darren McCarthy, and bang, Shawnee Kennelly. Like, I'm such a fan of his game, so I'm really hoping that he can do well for Tipperary as the year goes on. But still a very young player as well. You know, last year was his first year in the senior panel, and he made an impact in the games. And there's a bit of a bite to him as well. We saw that even last year. I think, wasn't it him against Limerick? He kind of put on, I think his debut last year was against Limerick in the Munster Championship, and he kind of left one late on Declan Hannon. Not that you'd be advocating for that, but it was kind of a something that you're like, okay, there's a bit of cut to him, and we saw that today. Like, I've mentioned it before that he's not lightning quick, he's not slow, but he's not like get away from you speed. But his speed of hurling is just so good, and his ability and skill level is really high. And he took that one good score. Remember, I think was it Ronan Maher played him the ball down the line, and when the camera panned, Kennelly was in loads of space, but he was inside like the 21 out near the sideline. And it was one of those ones where you have time and you're like, ooh, do you know, this is a bit of a dodgy shot because of the angle, but he just nailed it over the bar, and he done one on the opposite side later in the game as well. So really good performance from Shawnee Kennelly. And do you know, after that performance, you're kind of looking at him like, you know, he could be work his way into the starting lineup, and why not? Because he was one of the form players for Moneygall and in the club championship, and we've seen what he can do for Tipperary in short spells in games last year. So it'd be really interesting to see how he's handled throughout the league as we kind of near towards the end of the league now, or well, not now, but in a couple of weeks' time. Darren McCarthy, I think he got 9 points all from frees, nailed the frees in fairness to him. From play, didn't get a lot of possession from play, but there was that he set up the goal, he set up a couple of other points as well. And you know, you have to remember Darren McCarthy is 19. He's in there marking Dan Morrissey or, you know, whoever in the Limerick full back line. But Dan Morrissey at times, and Barry Murphy, who got man of the match on TG Carr. Like, this is a different standard to even what he's been playing against. And you know, he's holding his own. If you hit him in a ball and he's in front of his man, he's able to use his body. He's not a big frame or anything, but he's real strong center of gravity. And I think he's doing really well, and he's not lighting it up from play or anything like that. But if you're hitting a ball into Darren McCarthy, there's a fair chance that something will come from it. He's really good holding up the play, like holding off his man and working the ball into his hand and playing it off. So I've been really kind of satisfied with his performances so far. Been nailing the frees, which is a big thing, and long may that continue. So that was the starting 15. One thing I probably was disappointed with from Tipperary today was we got little impact from the bench. The subs we did bring on, I'll bring them up here. The subs Tip brought on was Brian McGrath for Seamus Kennedy, Conor Bowe for Darius Stakelum. They were in the 46th minute. Michael Corcoran come on for Craig Morgan on 57, and then John McGrath come on for Grode O'Connor, and Johnny Ryan come on for Willie Connors. Those were on the 65th minute. So, yeah, it was, Brian McGrath gave away a couple of frees. There was that time where he broke onto the ball in a forward position and he got hooked. You're kind of hoping he'd just stay running with the ball because you knew there was a high likelihood he would get hooked. Conor Bowe just struggled to get the ball into his hand today. Now, very difficult underfoot conditions and coming onto the field and things like that is always going to be difficult, but you would have liked to seen a bit more. We haven't seen that explosion from Conor Bowe just yet in this league campaign like we saw maybe last year when he was wing back, and even the year before when he was scoring quite a number of goals in the league campaign a couple of years ago. And then for the likes of, I didn't see much of Michael Corcoran when he came on. John McGrath, again, just struggled to get into possession and influence the game. Like, he wasn't on an awful long time, but Johnny Ryan as well, didn't see an awful lot of him when he came on. So that was a disappointing element from a Tipperary point of view, was just maybe the lack of impact from the bench. It's something you're going to need if you're going to beat Limerick, because it's really hell for leather stuff for the players out in the field, and there's going to be people out on their feet come 55, 60 minutes, so you need that impact from the bench. So that's something I'm sure Liam Cowell will be hoping that will come good later in the year. Unused subs, Jason Ford was an interesting one. We still haven't seen Noel McGrath. Andrew Ormond wasn't used, either was Oisin O'Donoghue or Gavin O'Halloran. So those are all good options that can make an impact, but you have to remember this time of year, Liam Cowell is probably managing players' fitness levels and their workloads and things like that. So, I think throwing an 18-year-old Oisin O'Donoghue into that kind of cauldron mightn't be the best. Maybe it would have been a good thing. He'd be well able for it, I'm sure. But I think the management of these younger players is going to be important, not just this year, but in future years as well. But I like how the squad is coming along so far. And it will be really interesting to see how we go against Cork in Semple Stadium. We all know what happened last year against Cork in Semple Stadium in the Munster Championship, so I'm sure Liam Cowell will be using that as a motivation for his players. But yeah, first kind of block of games in the league, 2 wins and 1 loss, and a good performance. We didn't get blown out by Limerick or anything like that. Not that we're taking kind of moral victories and losing to Limerick or anything, but I think that's to be accepted from the first 3 games. 2 wins, 1 loss to Limerick, and in a good spot. I think I have the league table brought up here. So Tipperary, we're still top of the league, so we'll take that, albeit on score difference, I think. So Tip first, Kilkenny second, then Galway all on 4 points, Cork and Limerick on 3, and Clare and Wexford on 0 points at the minute. Clare still only haven't played 2 games, same as Limerick. So next up for Tip, as I mentioned, is a game against Cork. So that's going to be a big one in 2 weeks' time on the 22nd. So that's just a quick word on Limerick as well as we go down through their team. Shane Dowling back for them. So he hit 1 or 2 like really good puck outs, a few kind of poor ones at times, but there was some where you're like, yeah, like his ball striking ability is really, really good. So he hit some great puck outs. Dan Morrissey is a wall at full back. Like he's so strong under. Now he probably got caught maybe for the goal, knocking it down, and Darren McCarthy picked it up and hand passed it off. But he's just a rock. Kyle Hayes collided with Ronan Maher and had to be taken off. So be interesting to see. I think John Kiley speaking after said it was nothing too serious, just kind of a minor kind of pinch he felt in his leg or something. So Adam English, Keane Lynch, really, really good in the middle of the field. Diarmaid Byrnes, 7 points. That's probably one of the problems for Tip. I'm not sure who was kind of marking him at times. There was definitely one ball he caught over Grode O'Connor's head. But that was the problem. Like Limerick are so good at. There was 1 point in the first half where they worked it up through the hands, and you could see it happening. It was like all the players on the field were looking from like the commentary position where you can see everything. They knew that if they played into Colin Coughlin, that at the other side, Diarmaid Byrnes was making a run. He was free for the hand pass, and Diarmaid Byrnes is free in the centre of his own 65. It's laser-like straight over the bar. I think he might have hit 1 wide maybe, but like his free taking, his shooting from range. And it's not even how accurate he is shooting from range, but it's how he's able to find himself in a position where he's free. He's just so good at kind of reading where the space is going to open up and make himself available. And suddenly you're thinking, how is Diarmaid Byrnes free in his own half back line? But that's just the skill in itself that he's able to do that, and his teammates are able to get him the ball. So, so he was man of the match, I think. I think they gave it to Barry Murphy, but Diarmaid Byrnes was incredible as well. So that's something Tipperary will have to work on for the next time they play Limerick is just, they're so good, Limerick, at bringing the ball out of the half back line, and you think you have them battled up, and suddenly they might turn, play a hand pass backwards, and spray it cross field to a free Diarmaid Byrnes or to a free Colin Coughlin. And there was one stage Keane Lynch got the ball as well, and in that middle third, right between the two 65s, and you're thinking, oh, he's kind of battled up here, but he knew that, I think was it Dara Stakelum who was behind him was going to be rushing up to him. So when he got it, he kind of already had it played to Dara Stakelum's man, and it was almost like he had eyes in the back of his head. But that's just Keane Lynch, and the player he is. Had that incident with Brian O'Mara. Darren McCarthy was taking a free, and there was kind of a jolt of a hurley into the midsection of Brian O'Mara. I don't think it was, it wasn't a quarter of the strike that Seamus Flanagan did the week before. I think it was more in the stomach, and it wasn't really a full-on dig. It was more of I didn't think there was much in it, but it was one of those ones where the rule book will say if it's a striking offence, it has to be a red, but like that shouldn't have been a red card, but it probably shouldn't have been nothing either. It probably should be a yellow card, but there's no real rule that says, oh, if you strike someone but you don't hit them that hard, it's a yellow. I don't think anyway. So it's just one of them ones. I don't think it was a red card or should have been a red card or anything close to it, but something worth mentioning as well. So that is pretty much all we have for this week's podcast. Oh, the team. We'll go through the team. So as I was saying last week, every week I'm going to update kind of the starting championship team predictions. So last week we had Reece Shelley in goals. Am I going to change that? It's a clean sheet for Barry Hogan today, which will be good for his kind of standings. Will I flip-flop? I'm going to be doing a lot of flip-flopping here. This isn't me nailing my colours to the mast in the first week and saying, right, this is my championship team, and that's it. We'll leave Reece Shelley in for now. We'll leave that full back line in of Robert Doyle, Owen Connolly and Michael Breen. I think Brian O'Mara 5 and Ronan Maher 6. I think that's fairly nailed on. Maybe Reece Shelley, Barry Hogan, that's the 50-50 one, but I think Doyle, Connolly, Breen, O'Mara and Maher is fairly nailed on. Sam O'Farrell is who I have down. It's going to be interesting to see how the under-20 players are managed, because they have an under-20 campaign as well. So I have Sam O'Farrell down. It seems that Liam Cowell has good faith in Seamus Kendi. Will I change it? I might have to. Sam O'Farrell has only kind of played that one league game against Galway. No, we're going to leave Sam O'Farrell in for now. We'll see how it plays out. I will leave those midfield, Gerard O'Connor, Jake Morris, Allentine. I think those will be the half-forward line. And this is where it probably gets interesting now. Darren McCarthy, I think, will be one of the corner forwards. But those other two positions in the full forward line, we haven't seen Dylan Walsh since that game against Galway, where he lit it up. We didn't see Andrew Ormond today. We saw Shawnee Kennelly today, and we saw what he could do. So I think Shawnee Kennelly will have to take one of these spots. So let's just do this. We'll take Shawnee Kennelly. So we'll put him in full forward, and we will copy and paste Jason Ford and Connor Bowe, and we'll put them. Sorry now, if you're listening to the podcast, this is awful listening, but bear with me for a second now. And then we take Shawnee Kennelly out here. Right, so I have Shawnee Kennelly and Darren McCarthy in the full forward line with one of Dylan Walsh, Andrew Ormond, Connor Bowe, Jason Ford. So I think from what we've seen from Connor Bowe so far, you'd have to put him on a level maybe below what we've seen from Dylan Walsh and Andrew Ormond. And although Jason Ford didn't light it up against Wexford, could I see him not starting against Limerick? I suppose I could. So we'll take Jason Ford out for the minute. But again, this is a rolling team. So that leaves us with Dylan Walsh or Andrew Ormond to be starting in the full forward line with Shawnee Kennelly and Darren McCarthy. So, there's still, obviously, we haven't seen Noel McGrath yet. We haven't seen maybe one or two other players that I'm not thinking off the top of my head. So that's how I see the team at the minute. Am I overly confident that will be the starting team? No, but that's where we are at the minute. If you think it's any different, let me know. If you're listening on the podcast, it's Reece Shelley in goals, full back line of Robert Doyle, Owen Connolly and Michael Breen. Brian O'Mara, Ronan Maher and Sam O'Farrell in the half back line with Willie Connors and Craig Morgan in midfield. The half forward line of Gerard O'Connor, Jake Morris and Alan Tynan. And the full forward line of Darren McCarthy, Shawnee Kennelly and one of Dylan Walsh and Andrew Ormond. Let's see how it all plays out. February 22nd down in Thurles, down in Semple Stadium against Cork. That's what's next up for the Tip Senior Hurlers. So yeah, until then, I probably won't do a podcast next week. I'm hoping that I'll be back ready to kind of work next weekend. Tipper playing Waterford down in Dungarvan in the football. So I still I'm not allowed drive for another few weeks, so that might make getting to Dungarvan a little bit awkward. So we'll see how all that plays out. But hopefully by the time I'm next recording a podcast, I will have been commentating on Tip versus Cork and probably be able to give a little bit more insight when you're actually at a game and commentating at it. You're kind of living the game an awful lot more than when I'm just watching on TV. So yeah, that'll be that for this week's podcast. Again, many thanks to everyone who got in touch after last week's one. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this podcast, like and subscribe. It's free and it's free everywhere, but subscribing on YouTube is completely free. You'll just be kind of notified when I put out a new podcast and things like that. So yeah, like and subscribe, give us a good rating on Spotify. And yeah, until Saturday the 22nd, maybe the following day I'll record the podcast. But for another couple of weeks, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you then. Good luck.